What's up, my fellow YouTubers? So, since I got rid of all my older videos and I'm starting fresh, I figured I'd do another blog. I've done them before, but it's really interesting. What I went through with my Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Now, everybody's situation is different. Mine was kind of very, I dug myself a lot of holes that normal people don't dig themselves, and then there's other people that dig bigger holes that I'm not aware of until I watch like Investigation Discovery, and I'm like, holy fuck, I thought what I did was bad, look what they did, but those people, they borrow from like, you know, illegal shit, and I never did any of that, but I still dug myself a big enough hole where I was like, holy shit. I'm mainly a simple guy. I work at a factory. I enjoy the simple life, and I just upload video games for fun. I've always done it. You know, um, my credit though was really good, and I just bought a new Subaru back in 2017. It was a Subaru Impreza, and I still have it. I just paid it off this past July, and my credit score was like in the 800s. It was like the best that you can get. I was 42, I think, when I got it, 2017. Yeah, I was 42. Still, like it was at the peak of my credit life where, okay, now what do I want to do? You know what I mean? And right off the bat, all I did was just work a shitload of overtime, and it was like enough to pay the car payment and everything else, just enough, just enough. And one day during the summer, I was just sitting outside, and I just saw this black guy in a really fancy car, and I don't even know how the fuck I fell upon these videos. I can't remember, because before that, all I was watching was like gaming videos and wrestling videos, because that's all I really gave a fuck about. And I still, to this day, now that I'm done with all this shit, my feed fills up with mainly gaming videos and wrestling. That's just about it. But for some reason, I fell upon this black guy with a really fancy car. I forgot his name. And really cool guy. He's like, hey, my friends, everything I do is legal. It's called drop shipping. It's where, somebody pays, you charge somebody more than what you're paying for it, and they call it drop shipping because you're shipping it from somewhere else to their house. And he's like, look at my lifestyle, look where I am. I want you to have the same thing I have. And I was like, wow, my credit's good. Okay, let's open up my own store. And then I started to subscribe to other people, Hayden Bowles, Alex Becker, he's still one of my favorites. Even Hayden Bowles, I mean, shit, yeah, I still follow him every once in a while. I just don't follow drop shipping anymore like I used to. But I opened up my own store, and I think it bombed really bad, because even looking back now, I said, everything's free, this and that, and all my credit cards were paid off, so I had no problem at the time using them. I wasn't using them a hell of a lot, but I was like, okay, I could still manage, still making enough sales where I can still manage it, okay. Then it started getting a little steeper, because I was losing money, and I was like, oh shit. And every time I lost money, or my store bombed, there would be another video saying, well, your first store is going to bomb, and that's a good thing, because then you learn. Then you make another store. Don't quit. In other words, don't quit too early. Don't quit. String you along, And so I made another store and another store, and jumped to, I think, 2018. One of my stores that I made wasn't putting any money in. All of a sudden, I got a big order, and it was the cat store, because I love cats. I have my own cat page. I still have it. And I said, wow, all right, I got this big thing, from out of nowhere without paying any money for it. And I ran with that for a while. By the end of 2018, what I was doing was I was borrowing, I got a couple more credit cards just for my business. At the time, I wasn't going south that quick, but it was American Express, and they're supposedly like one of the best, whatever. Here's a business card, whatever. It was like $13,000, and I was just using it for my business, and it was getting good, better, like to the point where I was like, wow, I have to register my business from the town because I'm making so much in revenue, not really profit, but revenue, that I have to, when I do my taxes, I have to let them know, that oh my God, my store is doing better than I thought it would be because it was during the holidays, and I would get chargebacks, and it was aggravating. But then, okay, the credit card will pay for the chargeback, whatever. It was like if you watch the movie with Danny Trejo, about his life, he said, whatever drug he was on, heroin, I think, was like the blanket that took away your pain. But then you realize that it's the same blanket that's going to choke you, and it's kind of like the same thing with the credit cards. They're a blanket, but then that same blanket can be used to choke you, right? So jump to 2019. Um, wow. For a while, I was doing a lot of overtime, but I was working 8 hours, but I would do 12 hours. I would do Saturdays, but I was happy. I was even going to church every Sunday. Now, I'm not saying, oh, my church attendance sucks. I'm not saying I'm the perfect example of what a Christian should be. I'm a Christian at heart. You can see Jesus on my walls, okay? Love to read my Bible, okay? There comes a point where you have to stop taking people's shit, okay? That's just my view on it. Turn the other cheek doesn't always work in the real world. Once you get out in the real world, and I still struggle with that, okay? But besides the point, okay? Basically, my life's pretty good, but I'm losing money in the store, right? Jump to 2019. By then, I stopped going to church because my workplace was mandatory 12-hour shifts, right? Every other weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 12 hours. Oh my God. Just burnt out, exhaustion, aggravation. And it was mandatory. It wasn't like, hey, you can if you want to. I'm used to the 8 hours, working overtime 12 hours to get time and a half. Fine. And if I work Saturday, I get time and a half. Fine. But mandatory straight time 12-hour shifts. If you get a doctor's note, you're out of here. Basically, like we're slaves. I was fucking miserable, okay? I was like, oh my God. And then my store had its good days and bad days. I was losing money, but there was this hope that I could get the fuck out of my job, right? I could get the fuck out of my regular job. I wasn't happy there. I hated it. I just wasn't happy being a slave to somebody else that was like, this is mandatory 12 fucking hours, right? So what I did was I borrowed from Amex another card, not reading the fine print. And this card, it was like the gold. I'll never forget it. They sent me it and they said, you're golden, you're gold in my ass, And I used that one for my business. Basically, I was going really aggressive, and my goal was to get the fuck out of my job that I was in. And instead, I dug myself a bigger hole trying to get out of it. And I called up the lady, I'll never forget it, with my gold card. And I said, oh, how much do I owe by next month? Thinking that your normal card will only charge you the interest or whatever. And when the lady said $5,000 I owed by next month, that's when I was like, oh, whoa. That's when I started to hit rock bottom. And with drop shipping, they make the app so addicting that you get addicted to the sales like you would a casino. There's 3 carts, right? One cart is add to cart. When the customer adds the cart, you see it go up. Ooh, look at that. Then the customer initiates checkout. Ooh, just like the casino, you get 2. There's no guarantee that you'll get the third one, but when you hit the third one, you're like, yes, a sale, right? But if sometimes you don't hit that third one. What happens when you don't hit the third one? Oh, shit, Damn it, they didn't buy, Put more money into it, right? Put more money into the advertising to get that purchase, just to get the feeling of the purchase, even if you lose money. Sound familiar? It's like addiction with gambling, and almost like addiction with drugs. It became like an addiction for me, and I didn't plan on it being that way. So with that credit card, I'm like, oh my God, and I went to a family member and I said, hey, can I borrow some money to get out of this hole? They let me borrow the money. Guess what? I paid them off, and they were happy about it. Great. I was able to use the card, and guess what? I used it and kept on losing money. So now I borrowed money from family to pay off that card, right? Use the card for advertising, and kept on. Zzz. So now I'm just in a bigger hole. Now I owe family that 10,000 on top of the credit cards that I paid off, but then used again to just be where I was before. It's funny, but it's not. And so jump to the beginning of 2020. All that time I've been able to, and I was taking loans out. Like I took one out from PayPal. I took, during the holidays it's supposed to be big, but like for some reason that by the time I get to the holidays 2019, I didn't have much. Now normally what drop shippers do, not saying that everything I did was wise either. They'll go slow and steady the whole year. They won't go too aggressive like I did. And then during the holidays, they'll collect emails, and then during the holidays, boom, they'll go all out, right? And then that's when they spend the most and they make the most during the holidays. By the time I get to the holiday, I was like, I didn't have as much to spend, and I still made enough to get by, but I was like, every week was like, oh shit, hopefully I didn't, hopefully I make enough to get by. There'd be times when I didn't have anything in the bank, and I had to wait for the paycheck from Shopify. Ooh, I get enough. Okay, I get enough, yeah. And then what? Then Amex wants to take some. Some other PayPal wants their share. I'm like, holy shit, like. So let's jump to 2020, the beginning of 2020. That's when COVID started to hit. And what happened was the first time in my whole life, I was like, holy fuck, I cannot pay my creditors. Like, that was like, after maybe January I could, but then after that, it was like, I don't have any money. Holy shit. Like, literally, I spent way more than I have, and boom, I don't have nothing. And I've always believed in a heaven and hell type of thing, you know what I mean? That, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying by any shot, I've never been the suicidal type, never. But when you're that, well, you get creditors trying to say, okay, like, it's like trying to feed this huge fish or a huge seal a bunch of small fish, and it says, I want more, and you don't have it, right? And you don't have it, and you spend your whole life always being on time with your payments. I mean, flawless, always on top of every payment, whether it be a car, electricity, whatever, doing overtime just enough to make it, but you still make it. You go from that to not being able to pay anybody, and you're like, holy fuck. And I would wake up, and I'm not proud of this, but I wake up with thoughts of like hanging myself. And it wasn't like I went along with it. It felt like somebody was pulling me into the undertow of an ocean. Like a force greater than me was like, it's not like I wanted to hang myself, or it's just that I didn't see a way out. And I was like, I'm not a cutter. I don't have any tattoos. I don't have any cut marks on me. I'm not the type to just swallow a shitload of pills. I'm a hanger, I guess. I don't know, because in my head I kept on envisioning a noose and me like, holy shit. And it was to the point where I sought professional help, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're the type, do not go or think that it's a bad thing to seek professional help. And I was like, holy shit. And they sent me to now back then it was COVID, so it was harder to get anybody. But I'll never forget, they first sent me to a behaviorist, and I said, okay, what's the difference between a behaviorist and this and that? And they said, well, your reaction causes behavior or something like that. And I'll never forget, I told her what was going on. I said, listen, there's a lot of stuff. My father died in 2019, so by 2020, it was like, oh wow, I was bummed out because his birthday was around the same day as me, February 12th, and mine was the 15th, and it was right, I think it was his birthday that I was like really bummed out. And we always said happy birthday to each other. So between that and me just like not being able to pay up, like go through anything, I was like, oh my God, I was like just crying. I mean, crying my eyes out, so helpless, like holy shit. And I'll never forget when she said, why don't you go bankrupt? And I said, I thought that was the end. And she shook her head, no, no, no. And from there, the behaviorist, we went to another psychiatrist. And by the end of the conversation, she gave me the number for the suicide hotline. Now, I've never been that way ever in my whole life. I've never thought of that. You think about it, but you never really take it seriously. I've never been like that until that point. And when you get older, I guess it's more financial. Like, holy shit, I can't fucking keep up with everything. But what that behaviorist first said to me stuck with me. And the psychiatrist after that, she actually she wanted to go back in my past. Your father, your mother, this and that. What did you go through? And when I started to tell her some of the shit that I went through as a teenager, it's almost like, I think, like she had to make the hours, like when the hour was up, she's like, okay, that's enough. Like she couldn't believe some of the shit that I went through as a teenager. And maybe that's a discussion for another time, but this is about the Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So what happened was my mother or her boyfriend, and God bless them, they paid for my lawyer. And from that point on, I let go of everything. In other words, okay, right now I got creditors coming after me. I can't do anything about it. Let the lawyer take care of it. I let go of it and just live my normal life. Like, hey, get up, go to work. And by 2020, the 8-hour shifts were back with a mandatory every other Saturday, which is fine for me. But it was 8 hours, and I haven't worked a 12-hour shift since, and I don't really plan on it. 12 hours is exhausting. It's aggravating. It's draining, especially the older you get. And I'll still work Saturdays, but I never worked a 12-hour shift from 2020 on to now. And I used to work them all the time before, and I just said, you know what, I'll do Saturdays, and then that's it. I'm not burning myself out. Got my car paid off in July this year. So, but this is 3 years ago. We're talking. Okay, so got my lawyer, and basically because I borrowed so much money from so many creditors, I had at least 10 coming after me. And I would get lawsuits in the mail, and I would get, even the sheriff was at my house like at least 4 times to serve me. And since I live upstairs, he would be downstairs, serve it to my mother or my niece who was home because they live downstairs. And I get a text from them, hey, look at, you got a lawsuit. And I was like, yep, I collect them now like fucking baseball cards. I didn't worry too much about it because I had a lawyer. But because I dug myself such a big hole and borrowed from so many people, so much shit, it wasn't like the case was easy. Think of it like, I guess, you're trying to bring in a big fish and it keeps on tugging at you. Kind of like that. It took a while. And because it took a while, it gave my creditors more time to build their case against me. So I was getting more lawsuits, more not really threats, but, harassment. And part of the deal was when we refinanced the house, the guy, for whatever fucking reason, he said, oh, he doesn't have to be there. Now, both of our names are on the house. He said I didn't have to be there. That's their fucking choice, okay? And this is before the bankruptcy even happened. But because my name wasn't on the house, my lawyer had to do a couple things. One was the Homestead Act, which protects me from something, gives me a certain amount of, think of it like a cushion, when things are trying to fall on you, a bigger cushion, so you'll keep your house. And two, the other thing was, before we filed, my name had to be on the house. So every 6 months, my lawyer would send them a mail saying, hey, can you please, we can fix this very easily. Just put his name on the house. And they kept on ignoring us. So strike three was that if something happened to my mother, I would get the house without having to pay for it, and then the bank would say, oh, we made a mistake, which they did. They fucked up. So that would work to our advantage, and so the lawyer said for the third time, now every 6 months, that's a year and a half from 2021 or so. So we basically told them, we'll assume that you intended to have my name not on the house. And that got their attention. They said, oh, shit. So, in other words, if something ever happened to my mother, I would get the house. The bank would come to me and say they made a mistake. And my lawyer could say, we tried 3 times, and you ignored us. So then the bank finally cooperated with me, and my name was finally on the house. And this was, I think, the end of 2020. Yeah, the end of last year. Finally, my name got on the house, and we could go forward with everything. So moving forward with this year, this is the year where it was like, okay, this is it. This is where we're gonna file. You know what I mean? And you have to go through like a quiz, I think, or like there's two things that you got to go through, like a course, like like almost like an AA meeting type of thing. Only it's with, you have somebody that you talk with on the phone. Oh, how come you're going through this? What happened to you? And basically, hey, I had my own business. COVID was the final nail in the coffin, which is true. It because of COVID, everything backed up from China, and I was getting all these, all these chargebacks, and I was like, oh my god, I was flipping out. That was the final nail in my coffin, and it's like 2 courses that you got to take. The first one is it only takes about an hour or so, but then the second one takes at least 2 hours, going on 3. So I did the first one back in 2021, I think, when I first was doing it. And by the time, because the bank was so stubborn with me, by the time this year happened, he's like, I'm going to treat you like a new client, So I went through the course again. I did the whole course again. As aggravating as it was, I knew it was going to be worth it in the long run, which it is. And then there's the meeting. Now, during this time, at least I think one of my creditors was getting really aggressive, like really, like, kind of not really threatening, but like, you got to show up at this date or else, or there's going to be an officer there. There's going to be contempt for not showing up. And ironically, when I got that letter, it was the very day that I finally filed. So the harassment just fucking stopped. And like, that was it. But anyways, first you take the first course, and then you have the meeting with the lawyer. And that's when you get all your stuff together, and you make sure that you have enough for the final meeting to present to the trustee. And where's, how much are you making? In other words, they want to see if you're not hiding anything. And basically, I have a regular job. I have less than $1,000 in the bank. I work paycheck to paycheck. There was nothing for me to hide. My business went south. I just closed my store down. Whatever. And I even had to go back into Shopify and bug them and say, listen, I know I owe you money. Can you tell me how much you owe? And they were like stubborn with me, and they finally said, okay, we'll show you who's the lawyer, this and that, just to include it in the bankruptcy. And so there's a meeting with the lawyer. You make sure you have all your shit together before he files. And once he files, then there's a meeting with the trustee. Now that scared the fucking shit out of me. What he'll basically do, and it's over the phone, which is pretty cool, because if it was in person, it would have been kind of easier, I guess, because my phone would have worked, because I'm in person, you know what I mean? But in a way, it's intimidating. You're like, you can't hide behind a phone, right? They're intimidating. They really are. Oh my god, it felt like a mob guy. He sounded like a mob guy. And my lawyer said, call in first, like give yourself, I don't know how long. And I started to understand what he meant. What it is, you call in, you call in, but you listen, you mute yourself, and you listen to the cases before your name's called to get an idea of the questions that he's going to ask and how to respond. And it's very interesting. I wish, I don't know if there is a place where I could just listen to those, like a lot of them, just vicariously, like, oh my God, because some of those cases were very interesting. There's the regular guys, hey, I can't afford it, lost my job, this and that. But then there's like the people that own their own business and they were trying to hide stuff, and you could tell. And that's why it took him so long. So he's like, oh, all the 10:30s. And I was at 10:30, like, call back in a half hour or something. And then my lawyer would call in. And what happened was when my time came, and I don't know why, but my phone, for whatever reason, it was a Droid. Every time I would unmute, he would say, whoever's breathing in the phone, stop it. And I didn't catch on. I would unmute it real quick, but every time I did, he would say, whoever's breathing, stop it. And when it was my turn and I unmuted it, I couldn't hear him. All of a sudden, his voice was breaking up. And to him, my voice was breaking up, and he couldn't hear me either. And I flipped out because that feels like on the Deadliest Catch when you go to hook, you gotta hook that in right then as it's coming in. Like that's your way out of the whole chapter 7. That's the make or break, is that one fucking moment, and my phone speaker just doesn't want to work, and he can't hear me, I can't hear him, and I hear him screaming. I'm like, holy fuck. And I ran downstairs. My mother just happened to be home, and I grabbed her phone, took it up, and and I called in from there, and it worked fine. I had the number, called in from there, and he's like, oh, I can hear you. I actually had to speak in between the other. He just went right onto the other case. I'm like, holy shit. And I spoke up as they were approaching the end of the case. I said, hey, look, it's me. My phone didn't work. He's like, oh, I can hear you. So then finally my time was up, was here. And I had nothing to hide. But I was nervous as fuck because those guys, whoever that was, he sounded like a mob guy, like a mafia dude. And he was like, Mr. Stanley. And he was like, just ask me, why are you here? And I said, look, my business went south because of COVID. I spent more than I had. I can only keep up with the small bills, not the big bills. And he was like, do you plan on keeping your house? I said, yep. And I forgot what else he asked, but he's like, oh, is that your only bank account? Yeah, yes, it is. I live paycheck to paycheck. I make the envelopes. And he said, do you plan on having your own business? I said, not anymore. And as I said that, I heard somebody laugh. It might have been my lawyer, but it might have been somebody listening. I said, not anymore. And he goes, basically, he was just like asking me, basically, they want to see if you're hiding anything, which at that point, I'm like, I work a regular job. I can't keep up with anything. And I have my house, and I'm going to keep it. And I co-own the house with my mother. And I answered all of his questions, honestly, because there's nothing to hide. And he's like, okay, you're all set. Have a good day. Like, I was like, holy shit. And I went out, and I'm trying to lose weight. But, man, I went out, and I celebrated. I fucking bought a shitload of food, and I pigged out, just celebrated the whole fucking... It was during the summer. It was July. And, back then, the air conditioner's going, and, you're all set, and you're celebrating. And then, basically, if it goes good with the trustee, you're golden, but you still got to wait. So, since some people put loans on my house, there was like a motion to take the lien. There was a motion to take the lien off. Waiting for that. Waiting for the approval from the court that it's over with. But basically, the meeting with the trustee is the like the final boss in a role playing game, right? Once you make it past that, you're all set, and then it's just to wait for the credits. But basically, I finally got a thing in the mail saying, basically it's all set, you're all set, you're golden, boom. And then after that, you wait a couple months for the credits to everything against you to fall off in your credit report. But the whole ordeal, I think, took, 4 years for me, like from 2019 to now, it's over 4 years of just dragging out and thinking about it and worrying about losing your house, worrying about being homeless, I think of all things, I worried about losing my cat the most. Because, oh shit, what if I have to find a place to live and they say no cat? I would live in my fucking car with a cat, you know what I mean? Before I let that happen. But basically, it's a nightmare, but in the long run, it's financial freedom. And financial freedom doesn't mean that you're rich. It doesn't mean that you don't live paycheck to paycheck. It means you don't owe anybody anything, and you're just like, what you spend is yours after you pay your bills, and you're just like all set. Um, and that's my experience with my chapter 7, because it went back and forth from a 13 to a 7, but the problem was there was no overtime this year. So it wasn't like, well, there was very little overtime. And then the overtime I did do, I saved up for brakes because I needed brakes for my car, front and back. So um, it wasn't like I could do a 13 where I had enough. I lived paycheck to paycheck just enough to pay the bills and everything else. So instead of that, we did a 7, which 7 sounds like, oh my God, you're going to lose everything, but you really don't. If you're honest and you have the Homestead Act, and your lawyer, if he's good, he should prepare you for that anyways. But it's still a nightmare. But once the nightmare is over with, you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I don't owe anyone anything. No more sheriff coming up my house. No more like threats of, if you don't show up here, this is going to happen, or oh, you owe this and that. And it's like, oh my God, and it's like, holy shit. And then, and now it's like my focus is on, man, I'm trying to get monetized with YouTube. Man, I'll be 50 in a year and a half. Hey, you know what? Fuck, we all get old. Okay, we all pass on at some point. It's what we leave behind that matters, really. Okay, hopefully somebody's watching my video like, boom, 100 years from now when YouTube's still here. Hopefully, if the world doesn't fucking just blow itself up by then. But you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things in a lifetime where everybody goes through it, I think, at least once in their lifetime, or a lot of people do. And that's my experience. And I would like to know your experience if you ever went through anything like that, and what you did to conquer it, or what happened, for better or worse. Was it a 13 or a 7? A 13 is like you pay them off throughout time, and it just takes you longer to get a credit card. Whereas a 7, everything gets wiped out, and then you can, within 6 months of filing, which will be about Christmas this year, you can apply for a new credit card, which I'm already getting offers in the mail. I'm only going to use it to build up my credit and pay off whatever I get. I'm going to pay off. I'm not going to do anything stupid. But yeah, it was so awesome just to get it over with. And I'd like to hear your experience if you ever experienced it. And well, it's a long blog, well, over a half hour. But hey, hope you all enjoyed this. And hope you all have a good weekend, good Thanksgiving coming up. So I'll have more videos and blogs coming out. All right. Peace out, my fellow YouTubers.